Alright, so the Season 9 changes have been out for a while now, bringing some pretty drastic changes to the game. It introduced the DPS passes, from which finally, DPS no longer feels like a cosmetic role, as well as the health pool changes and the projectile size changes. Now, regardless of what you think about the changes, there's still one thing that wasn't fixed and can't be fixed in this current format: the tank role. Now, why is that? It's because the tanks are still prone to the massive issues of the 5v5 format, and there is no update or change that will ever remedy this problem unless we switch back to 6v6. Let me explain. As a tank, you are one of the most important members of your team, and you are usually the deciding factor of your team winning and losing the fight. If you, as a tank, die, the chances of your team losing the fight skyrocket exponentially, forcing your team to retreat and give up space. Because there's only one of you, and because you have the most impact on your team, your mistakes as a tank are much more severe and detrimental and are much easier to point out compared to the other roles. Also, you have far more responsibilities to address compared to support and DPS, and you have less flexibility on how you choose your fights. Let's take Genji for example. You have the freedom of taking off angles, avoiding bad matchups for mobility, choosing when you do and don't want to engage, and overall, you just have to worry about securing kills. Yes, you do have to have the mechanical skill and game sense to execute your plays, but overall, this is still very manageable for you to do. For supports, you just have to worry about the health states of all your teammates and using your kits to keep them alive. If you're playing a support that can actively help in fighting like Baptiste or Mora, you can also help in securing kills. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you have multiple different ways of playing and flexibility and freedom of how you want to use your characters as DPS and support. You don't have that freedom on tank. You have to be on the front lines to face the enemy tank to stop them from taking space. You have to be in the front taking cooldowns from the enemy team and hope your team can capitalize on opportunities you gave them by doing that. You have to be the one mitigating damage so the enemy doesn't blow up your team. You don't have very much freedom to do anything while having to deal with all that. It just isn't fun. On top of that, you can't do everything at once. What do you do if you have a Tracer and Genji tearing up your bat line as tank? You have to be in the front to deal with the enemy tank to stop him from taking space. You don't have a second tank to help protect the backline. You either pull back to help the backline, giving up space to the enemy to capture the point, or you stay in the front to try and stop the enemy tank's advance. You can't do everything on your own. You have to hope that your DPS can deal with the problem, and if they can't, you lose, and there's nothing you can do about it. So now, let's talk about the next point. Counterpicking. The eternal game of rock, paper, scissors that you're ultimately doomed to play if you dare play tank. As we know, most of the tanks have kits that are meant for countering each other within the role. Zarya and the D.Va, Roadhog and the Doomfist, Orisa and the Malga. While it's still possible to play around your counters, you will objectively have a harder time fighting against whoever your counter is. This is where the endless loop begins. You're playing Doomfist, they switch to Hog. You switch to Malga, they switch to Orisa. And this will go on and on until the end of the match because there's only one tank, and because there are multiple characters that counter each other within the tank role, you will always have to counter or be countered unless you want your life to be a living hell. And it gets even worse, because the DPS and support role have characters that can counter the tanks as well, even though they are soft counters. It still leads to a domino effect that ultimately makes it harder for you to play. You're playing Roadhog, boom! Now you gotta deal with Reaper, Bastion, and Ana. Playing D.Va, get ready to deal with Symmetra, Mei, Moira, Brig. You're a Ball main or a Doom main, get ready to get hacked by Sombra 1,000 times, as well as getting hooked straight to hell by Roadhog. And these are situations where no matter how well you play or who you swap to, because you're the only tank, you are the prime target for the enemy team to bully you. If you had a second tank like a Winston, for example, diving their backline, you have someone else to take some of the heat off you, so you're not getting countered by literally everyone, and you will have more time to make better and complex plays. This is why counter swapping as a tank is so heavily incentivized, and why there's no change the devs could possibly do to fix this problem. This is not a balance issue, this is a format issue. You do not have a second tank to back you up against multiple characters that have kits designed to make your life. There isn't a second prime target to split any of the enemy's attention, so you're not the only one getting dogpiled. You don't have anyone to counter your weaknesses, so you have to swap or else you're just gonna have a harder time. This actively takes away the choice of you playing characters that you want to play and forcing you to pick characters that you have to play, which just straight up isn't fun. But basically, to wrap this all up, I don't believe the changes have made tank better or any more fun to play. I don't think this has really remedied the problems of the 5v5 format for tank players, and I don't believe there's anything the devs can improve the tank experience due to the limitations of the 5v5 format. that's all for now. See ya.